Alright, so what we're going to do today is we're going to do some chalk pastel. We're going to zoom in on an image. So I printed off some royalty-free flower images that are really close up. And I'm going to attempt to replicate this in chalk pastel. So what we need to do first is just get a rough outline of a few of our lines. And again, you know, if you've watched any of my other videos, lines don't exist. Just separations of value. So I'm going to look for my imaginary lines and outline them, especially in the dark areas. The light areas are just gonna have to be something I have to pay attention to. So I'm going to attempt to do this with my 5th grade class, and this is going to be their introduction into reference images, making sure that they know how to follow and consistently follow a reference image, not just going off of memory. Okay, there's a reason that we have an image and we're going to use it. Okay, so I'm going to set this aside and I'm going to set my chalk pastel aside. I'm going to turn my paper here, since I'm at a 16. This is 16. This is 18 by 16. So 16 tall, 18 wide. Not exactly this size, but it's okay. We'll just, if I go bigger, then I go bigger. No big deal. What I don't want to do is go too small, because then either I'm making something up or I have to fill background or cut paper. I'd rather go big and go off the paper than not fill up the paper. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do, first thing you will do if you are going to attempt this, or if you're my students, you're going to have your image in front of you and you're going to look for those areas of darkness so you can form your lines. Okay, and it just has to be rough. We don't want it to be too dark, because in a light area the chalk pastel is not going to necessarily cover it up, and if it does, we'll be lucky. But we don't ever want to count on our lines getting covered up. We want to draw very lightly. I'm going to hold my pencil like this in my hand and just kind of rough out some areas that I want to pay attention to. And then, because a lot of this is going to come with just blending of the chalk pastels. So layers and blending, layers and blending. So I'm just going to get a rough outline of where some things are, and then I'll dive right into the chalk pastel. Okay, so I think I got my outline. If you can't see that, I apologize, it's really light. Just know that I got my image in where I needed it to be in. I'll zoom in a little bit and see if you can't see any of the lines. There's some lines there that you can see. If not, just have to trust me, I have lines there. Then what we're going to do is just, I'm going to open up, I got a new pack here of pastel, find the colors, and if you don't have the exact color of what the flowers are, change the color. All you're looking at is value anyways, so where it's dark and where it's light, and don't rely on black to be your value change. So if you need to get darker with something, it doesn't mean go grab black. That's not how it works. We don't need to do that. So if I'm going to go darker with red, what color would I use to make red darker? Okay, so if we look at this image, this is kind of a pink tone, right? And then it gets a little darker and gets more close to red right here. And eventually, if you actually look at this, this doesn't look black at least not to me. This looks more like a violet, okay? Because all that's happening is the light is not hitting it as strongly. So I'm gonna end up adding a little bit of blue to the because I'm gonna make this whole thing red in the darker areas, and then I'm gonna add a little bit of blue to the red to make it darker. And blue and red, if you don't know, blue and red make violet, okay? So if it ends up looking too violet and not enough, not just dark or the shade that I'm looking for, I may add a touch of black, but I'm going to try to stay away from it. I'm going to try and do it all with just colors, not shades, because that's life. That's real life. Okay, so I'm going to dive in, and with chalk pastel, sometimes you just have to dive in, and you've got to go for it, and always start in a dark area in case you go. In case it's too light, you can always make it darker, but if you go right into a light area, then and you make it too dark, then you got to play the whole backtracking game, and we don't want to have to do that. So also, these are going to be a mess on your fingers, so you're not going to want to fingerprint all over your paper. You're going to want to try and keep your hand to the side, and then try not to touch it. If you start getting this, when you start getting this filled up, you can grab any sheet of paper that you've got, and you can set the sheet of paper on it and then rest your hand, so that way you're not smearing all the way through your beautiful pastel. Okay, so I'm going to start right down here. What I like about chalk pastels is the way that they blend. There's oil pastels and there's chalk pastels, and I favor the chalk because they blend so much easier and they're not chunky. It's very smooth. Always work from the back forward. So I've got this little pistil, I believe they're called in a flower. Got this little pistil in here, and I don't want to do the pistil first. I want to do the dark area around the pistil. This is something to take your time, no reason to rush. This isn't just using crayons and you're scribbling all over a big piece of paper. We should definitely be taking our time. And definitely use your fingers. We're not going to use stubs or anything like that. Use your fingers to blend out. I'm going to take some of my blue. Oh, my blue broke. I'm going to see what kind of a shade I can get. I'm already getting a... So I'm going to add a little bit, and then I'm going to blend it. You got to watch your finger if you're trying to avoid another object. You got to try and keep it nice and tight. Don't be real loose, because you're going to end up going over an area you don't want to go over. It's starting to get to the shade that I want. Yeah, darkness. I like that darkness. It's turning out really nice. See, and I didn't even have to use black. Okay, so now I got to pay attention to the rest of my flower here. So I'm right in one little spot, and this has got to start to branch out. We got to start to blend out. So we have to do that very carefully and precisely, but I'm going to go back with the red, and then eventually I'm going to use, I do have a pink, but I'm going to try to use the red without using the pink first and see what happens. And you gotta be careful. If you haven't washed your hands, that dark is still gonna be on your finger. So if you're trying to go in a light area and blend, be very careful. You're gonna need to make sure that you wash your hands. I just know that this needs to fade up lightly. I forgot a line there. I've got a little bit of a line on my... So what we don't want to do is abandon the texture. So if we've got the texture going in a certain way, we want to make sure that that texture goes that way. We don't want to just scribble all over the place and then try to smooth it out, because we might not be able to get all those lines going where we want them to be. So we got to make sure that we're trying to do this carefully.